Burke joins us now, as he does every Thursday, for some hockey talk, brought to you by Boston Pizza. Join us every Saturday for Hockey Night in Canada at Boston Pizza.
Missed you last week, Burke.
Yeah, you were ill, I hear.
I was ill.
He did also correctly predict that you would not be in on the Friday following the Thursday that you were ill, and thus making it a 4-day weekend. No, I'm sure you were sick for the 4-day weekend.
What was the exact verbiage on air, Burke, that you used?
Just said he's not
that
coming.
idiot's not coming in tomorrow? What did you remember what the line was?
I think that's what it was.
Well, I missed you dearly. It's always great to see you. I can't get enough of Matthew Tkachuk. Like I think part of the conversation right now in hockey is, have we had enough of the conversation yet? Do you still want to have the Matthew Tkachuk conversation? I am one of the biggest Matthew Tkachuk fans on earth. If you're the Flames, you tell him don't change a thing, right?
Yes.
Like, keep doing what you're doing.
Exactly. It's funny because they sent me to the lottery. Calgary sent me to the lottery, and we lost the lottery and slipped a spot and ended up with Matthew Tkachuk. So sometimes bad luck turns into good luck. But no, you tell him not to change a thing. He's a wonderful player. And what he accomplishes for a guy who's an average skater is amazing, because most of the top guys, point producers, are good skaters. And he is not, but he still gets everything done. He's a wonderful guy. He's a pain in the butt. He's a full-time pain in the ass, and no coffee breaks.
So what do you think comes of all of the chatter that we've heard in the last little while? Do you think when they meet each other again, and I know it's Flames and Leafs, and we'll get to that in a flash, Toronto fans, but when they meet again, do you think the way the Department of Player Safety has handled this, and the way Kassian got mad at the way it was handled, do you think that is going to boil over when they meet again?
Well, when I did player safety, we didn't call it player safety back then, but when I was in charge of supplementary discipline, we'd often have a really inflammatory game like this, and the next game I would go to, or Dave Nonis would go to make sure it didn't erupt. But sometimes they turn into flag football. The next game, everyone just forgets about what happened. I don't think that's the case here. I think this will carry over. But if you go back to this, I really don't think anyone did anything they shouldn't have done here. Like to me, I would have been fine with no suspension to Zach Kassian. But once I saw the replays, at some point the league feels they have to do something. And I said, well, maybe he shouldn't get suspended, but he's going to get suspended. Right. And I thought he'd get one game. He got two. I have no problem with that. It's not going to change the way Zach Kassian plays, and it's not going to change the way that Matthew Tkachuk plays.
Do they need to change the way Matthew Tkachuk hit in that, or are you okay with those hits?
The first hit, I think he ran a little bit. I think it's too long as a charge. Mm-hmm. But what he does, unlike if you go back, this is a hit that Colby Armstrong specialized in, where you come down off the post, a guy's coming around the net. He's generally got the puck. He's generally preoccupied, and you get a good free hit on him. I think he traveled too far in the first one. But what he does is he turns sideways and he ducks down so that there's no chance of a high elbow or shoulder right to the head. The second check to me was legal. First check, maybe a minor penalty. Should have been a minor penalty, but certainly not a suspension.
Right.
The reaction across the league to this continues in a way even into today, with Matthew Perreault in Winnipeg still fuming that Jake Virtanen didn't get anything for the hit earlier this week.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
So as a guy who's sat in that chair, as a guy, Brian, who's been responsible for saying yay or nay on suspensions, when you have that much heat coming at you, if you could give George Parros advice, I'm not saying he needs it, but if you could give him advice in a pretty hot moment right now from a disciplinary standpoint in the league, what would you say to him?
Stay the course. I think George has done a remarkable job. It's a job that's a lightning rod, and people think every decision is wrong. Some people, every decision you make gets attacked by a certain number of people.
Yes.
And given the teams involved, the team where you suspend a guy thinks it's too harsh, and the team where you don't suspend the guy thinks that the other team thinks he got off easy if you don't suspend him. So no one ever calls you and said, man, did you nail that one? You got that one just perfect. You got it right on the nose. Right. So I think George played for me, I don't think. He's a fearless guy. He was a fearless player. He's a fearless person. And I think he's going to do what he thinks is right, and you just tune out the noise. So a teammate complaining about a hit or a general manager complaining about a hit, that's part of the job. I got called every name in the book when I did that job. The late, great Pat Quinn, my old boss, told me off one time. I suspended Gino Ojic, and he told me, he said, you don't know enough about hockey to do this job. My old boss. I worked for you for 5 years. So it's a thankless job, but it's an important job because there's three levels of how the amount of violence on the rink takes place, there's 3 levels of regulation. One is the players themselves.
Yep.
And that's you want the players to regulate the game first. Second level is the referees. Third level is the league. And the league only gets involved when they truly think they have to. And people should know how the supplementary discipline works. Tie goes to the runner. So in other words, if I'm not sure if it's a suspension or not, then it's not. Like if I'm battling with, should I suspend this guy or not, then he doesn't get suspended.
You have any internal debate, you walk away from.
Exactly. And if you're stuck between 4 and 3, you give 3. The tie goes to the runner.
Right.
What you want to do is punish the misconduct and keep the game as safe as a full contact sport can be, but you don't want to take hitting out of the game. And that's the tightrope those guys walk, and they do a good job. Now, I got to make a disclaimer. My son works for the Department of Player Safety, but I think they've gotten most everything right this year, and I don't quarrel with the game above or below what I think is right. So it used to be people would say, you gave him 3, should have given him 4. I'm like, were you in the hearing? Right. Did you see the tapes? Did you see any of it? So anyway.
I'm okay with that. And I'm hard on the Department of Player Safety, but I do acknowledge that it honestly might be the toughest job in sports.
It is.
Like especially in the game of hockey where we made a rule on the show to stop slowing things down. You can show it slow, but give me the real time because that's the way the game is played, right? Like give me the actual speed because that's the way the game is played. And when you slow it down, sometimes I feel like you're doctoring. That said, you said put players first, and you want the players to police the game.
Like what Zach Kassian did, he just had enough. He had enough. You got running the game.
I get that. Yeah,
he had enough,
absolutely.
And he snapped. I have no problem with that.
So yeah, so when you give 2 games, are you saying then that maybe we want them to police to a certain extent because when you were in the Department of Player Safety or whatever it was called back then.
There wasn't a department. It was me and Dave Notice.
That wouldn't have been a suspension.
No, that would not have been a suspension.
Right.
In fact, I don't think it should have been. But I understand why it was. The optics are terrible.
Right.
And the notion of the aggressor, of a player beating up a player who doesn't want to fight, that's a good rule to enforce because I don't think players should have to fight.
Right.
But the other rule is, among the hockey players, is you can't create messes for other players to clean up all the time. Every once in a while, you got to clean up the mess yourself. You can't make eggs and put the dishes in the sink and leave them for someone else. So sometimes you got to do the dishes.
That's a great point. A great way.
And
to
I'm the guy who often just leaves it in the sink, so I understand the analogy to the surprise of no one here at the table.
When you're healthy enough to cook.
Oh, when you're healthy enough.
Did you just do that to Brian Burke?
No.
If I'm healthy now, I got my ties
so
untied.
in my 20 years of having to work with this guy, when you shut him up, you get.
Glad I didn't call in sick today. By the way, Burke, if it's the toughest job in sports and we all agree that it is, why the hell do people say, I'll take it? Like, why did you say I'll do that job?
It's important.
Well, it's important.
It is, but you don't have to take the slings and arrows on it. Let someone else do it.
Well, if everyone did that, then no one would take the job. I mean, when Gary Bettman offered me this job, he said, here's the components of the job, all right? So it wasn't player safety. There was no department. So it was Brian Lewis ran officiating. Mr. Gregory was great. He worked out of the Toronto office. But basically in New York, it was Dave Nonis and me. We had 4 VCRs. That was the Department of Player Safety.
Can you explain to people what VCRs are?
Yeah, we had
part of our
four VCRs with a runtime of 2 hours and 15 minutes. So Glenn Adamo, who was a VP of broadcasting,
you didn't go to EP. You go 8 hours.
Yeah,
6 hours
go to EP. Yeah.
So Glenn would come and say, which games do you want me to record? And he would set them to start recording 10 minutes after puck drop because you never have a suspension in the first 10 minutes.
Rarely.
And then we would hope that the glass didn't break or a net get dislodged or some problem that held up the game so that we could get to the end of the game. So I remember one night, there was a night that Billy Guerin chopped Peter Forsberg on the arm. So I'm driving back. I'm at a playoff game in Philly. And Pierre Lacroix calls, the GM of Colorado Avalanche. And Colorado's in Edmonton in a playoff series. And he screams into my ear, "It's worse than the Kennedy assassination." And I said, "What? What happened?" He goes, "Billy Guerin just tried to behead Peter Forsberg." Behead.
Yeah, okay.
So I said, "Look, Pierre," I said, "I'm driving back. I was at the game in Philly. I'm on the New Jersey Turnpike. I'm driving back. I taped your game. I'll look at it." Well, this is with the goalie out. So it's maybe not on the tape, right? The goalie's out. And Peter Forsberg's a left shot, and he's trying to jam in a puck in the front. The goalie's out. Billy Guerin chops him on the bicep, like we teach guys to disrupt the shot. And he's a right shot, and the stick clips Forsberg on the You got 6 stitches, I think. Well, we had an agreement with the Players Association that anything 10 stitches and under is a shaving cut. It's not an injury.
All right.
So I called Dave Nonis. He was at a game on the island, I think. He's driving back. I said, tell me we taped Edmonton. And he said, yeah, we did. I said, tell me. I said, we just had an incident with the goalie out. I won't be back for an hour and a half. You go in and look at it and call me. So then Gary Bettman calls me because Pierre Lacroix called him too. And he said, what happened in Edmonton? I said, how should I know, Gary? I'm driving back from Philly. So we get back, and Dave noticed. He's like, really, it's nothing. So thank God we got it. Like, the tape ran out right after this incident happened. And so we look at it, and we said, it's nothing. It's no suspension, nothing. Billy Guerin and I were laughing about it by text the other day. He heard me telling the story.
Denver Post online. I couldn't find the video. Dastardly deed must wake up Avs. His friends call him Bill, but he's public enemy number 1 in Colorado. Edmonton winger Bill Guerin is the butcher who brought what little beauty there is left in these NHL playoffs to a slaughter. And you left that alone?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't have the VHS tape, obviously.
It was a VHS tape. It was.
Guerin deliberately slashed Forsberg's mug, leaving a scar closed by 9 stitches.
9 stitches. See? Shaving cut.
All right.
Go ahead, Timmy.
I wanted to talk about the Leafs. And, I mean, obviously, you know a lot of franchises pretty well, but you know the Leafs and the Flames franchises pretty well. The Leafs are now scoring over 4 goals a game in 24 games under Sheldon Keefe. I did a little research. It's 4.17 to be exact. The last team to score 4 goals a game over an entire season, the 1995-96 Pittsburgh Penguins, Mario, Jágr, Francis. Nedved was 4th in the team in scoring.
Had a few players
with 99 points. He was 4th in the team in scoring with 99 points. They can't sustain this, right?
They may be able to sustain the. I think yes, they may be able to sustain it because I really believe that Mitch Marner's not playing his best hockey yet, and he's playing really well. But I think he's got another level, and I think Austin Matthews is just scratching the surface. I think once he figures out how to use his size a little bit more and throw people around, I think he's going to score more. And he's deadly now. He's lethal. So they can. I think their concern would be the other side of the ledger, winning 6-4, winning 8-6. That is something that probably isn't sustainable in a playoff model. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's what I would be concerned about. Can they continue to score at that level? Yeah, I think they can.
And they might have to because of that defense.
They might have to.
Yeah.
The Toronto hockey thing happened after that game when Rasmus Sandin played well, and all of a sudden he was Borje Salming. Realistically, Burke, in your opinion, what's the ceiling on this kid? And what should the expectations be over this stretch with Muzzin and Riley out?
He's legit. Sandin's legit. He's an elite player. He defends well. He's really good offensively. Great first pass. Like, this is no fluke what he did the other night. He's going to do that again. My concern in his draft year, the scouts felt strongly, every scout I talked to, is that this kid's tough. Like, he plays hard. He blows people up. And his stature is not that big. So the problem is the scouts all felt, much like Nicholas Kronwall, his draft year,
right,
they felt he'd be hurt a lot. And he was. He had a great career, but he was hurt a lot because he was too small to play the way he played. So that's my one concern with Sandin is he going to get hurt if he keeps blowing people up, because he is a mean kid. But those offensive skills you saw the other day, they're legit. This kid's a really good player.
I can't talk about scoring goals without talking about the Calgary Flames, because last year they were 2nd in the NHL, and right now they're 26th in the NHL at 2.65. Has Jeff Ward, though, found something that is freeing up the guys that he needs to free up? Because it seems like they're playing a little bit better, though the inconsistency that a lot of teams battle is what they're battling.
Well, I think they've tried to balance their lines a little bit by distributing some of the personnel and breaking up the big first line. So Lindholm has gone down and played center on the second line. They moved Michael Backlund over to left wing. And I think they feel they've got more balance this way rather than get into a playoff format where they can shut down one line, particularly on a road game for the Flames. Whatever building they're in, that team gets the last change. You can generally shut down one big line.
Yeah.
So they've got the same dilemma that Edmonton does. Do you put the 2 big guys together or do you split them up? So I think they're playing better. I like their team. They're a good bunch of guys. I went to their practice yesterday and talked to all the guys I know there, and I like their team.
We got 50 seconds, Burke. Unfortunately, time not our friend. On a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked were you Gerard Gallant was fired by the Golden Knights?
10.
And how long do you think he'll stay out of work?
As long as he wants to.
one of those guys.
Yeah,
Reputation precedes
he's a
himself.
good coach. This is I think that because they were afraid they wouldn't get Peter DeBoer in the offseason, that's why they moved on him, I believe.
Right. Especially when you heard all that talk about extensions.
Absolutely.
Always appreciate you stopping by, whether
pleasure.
Sid's here or not. In fact, sometimes it's better when Sid's
I
not.
think the segment last week was better, personally. We're going to call this the Burke block. We got to name this. We got to do something.
We tried last time. Didn't come up that
At
well.
Tim and Sid, what should we call Brian Burke's block? Please keep it clean. Brian Burke's block. Please keep it clean.